So, it has finally come full circle. I mustn't escape destiny, so let's get this over. Last December, I made a video discussing the history of Nights into Dreams. Near the end of that video, however, I discussed a certain game that looked similar to it, and they shared the same creator as well. That game, of course, being the star of this video, Balan Wonderworld. I only discussed how it took inspiration from Nights into Dreams, and I also talked about how much of a massive failure it was. Oh yeah, some guy was attracted to Balan or something, I don't know. I was not joking when I said that it was a massive failure. However, why was this game a massive failure? It has the pieces needed to be a fantastic game, those pieces being the industry big names and a colorful cast of very well-designed characters. Well, as we will all see, those all don't mean something great. Before we begin, however, I would like to thank the Balan Wikipedia page and the Balan Fandom Wiki for all of the information I am going to present. So, with that out of the way, let us begin our journey into Wonderworld. So in 2018, Sonic and Nights into Dreams creator Yuji Naka joined Square Enix and formed the subsidiary Balan Company. Naka formed members with people who work on games outside of Square Enix. With that in mind, Naka collaborated with Arcest, whom Naoto Oshima was a main staff member of. The collaboration was made since Naka was encouraged by Shinji Hashimoto to make more action games. The project was greenlit by Square Enix's executives, saying that this was Naka's one chance to make a complete 3D platformer, due to his experience in that genre. So, with Noriyoshi Fujimoto of Dragon Quest fame as the producer, they began development. Unfortunately, they shifted to working later in production since a certain sickness whose name we shall not say halted them. So with this, you could tell that there are some signs that could mean failure. Arcest is a game company that doesn't have a good track record. They're known for being the Yoshi's New Island and Hey Pikmin devs, which honestly makes me feel bad for Naoto Oshima because he deserves far better than this. He's a pretty talented dude. Square says that Balan is Naka's one chance to make a 3D platformer since Square Enix hasn't made a platformer and are unaware of it'll do well or not. They started production during a certain sickness whose name we shall not say, which tremendously messed up production for every type of consumable media ever. This doesn't help with the fact that, according to Oshima, their production approach was less structured. This also meant that they didn't add features like co-op until halfway through production. That is but a taste of the red flags this development unveils. So let's continue. They made the game multi-platform in order to appeal to a wide audience. However, their main audience was children, since the current console generation appealed to adults. When it came to the costumes, Naoto Oshima created a total of 120 costumes, and narrowed it down to 80. This surprised Yuji Naka because he was expecting to cut it down to 40 as the game went on. However, that honestly is something that they should have done in the first place. They designed all the costumes to have one button so younger players wouldn't be confused, which will be, in fact, the biggest mistake they've made developing this game, and you'll see why that is. For the story, Naka read Hero's Journey for some inspiration, so he created a dialogueless story. They got Japanese novelist Soshi Kawasaki to write the script. 12 out of the 30 to 40 stories were picked by Oshima, with him claiming that some of the rejected storylines were too dark. Aw man. Now I'm interested to see what those scenarios are. Yuji Naka did use Nights into Dreams as an inspiration by incorporating the fictional language, or Balinese. Balinese is actually just English except put in a blender and mixed it up to make it sound like a Pingu script. The world was based off of musical theater, taking heavy inspiration from Cirque du Soleil. I think I butchered that, but whatever. This explains Balan's theater trope outfit, and Balan living in a theater. This also explains the random dance cutscenes, but
let's not worry about that.
RZ starred as Yano Endo, even created poster artwork and some of the main characters in the game. The characters starring each chapter were made first, then the characters representing their positivity and that chapter's costumes were made. The music was composed by Ryo Yamazaki, who worked on other Square Enix games like Front Mission and Final Fantasy Chronicles. Composing the music was trial and error. He was originally going with music similar to Cirque du Soleil, which is pretty poetic. He eventually ditched it for music inspired by Tim Burton movies and The Greatest Showman. However, due to a certain sickness whose name we shall not say, Yamazaki had to record the music remotely. The musical pieces were written first, and they brought in Laura Pitt Pulford and George Bladen to record the lyrics. I shed a single tear for those two. They deserve better than singing the dance cutscenes in Balan Wonderworld. Well, that is all for the development of this game. You have made it to our main attraction, the release of the game. And from this point on, oh boy, it's gonna be fun. The game was revealed in July 2020, and everybody was pretty hyped for the game. Even the Billy Hatcher speedrun community was looking forward to it, actually. Then, that fateful day arrived. The January 2021 demo dropped. On that disastrous day, the reputation of the game was forever tarnished. Since there was no way to fix the major issues of the game within 2 months, Square Enix had the ingenious idea to give the game a day one patch. It included bug fixes and oh yeah, a bug where Lance has a seizure-inducing laser beam. However, that did not save the game when its novelization dropped. The game was critically panned for the oversimplified controls, confusing narrative, and completely useless additions. The game also nuked financially, with under 2,100 units in Japan. It even failed to make it to the top sellers in other countries as well. After the release, Yuji Naka resigned from Square Enix and thought about retirement. Instead, he went on to design a pretty crappy mobile game. In April of this year, Naka confirmed that he got fired 6 months before the game's release, due to the state of the game and the use of a fan cover of the game's songs. He even sued the company, accusing them of not caring for their consumers. Which, he isn't wrong, considering how they gave Chocobo GP a $20 battle pass and sold the Tomb Raider rights for NFTs. However, this is the same guy who canceled Sonic Extreme because they used the Knights engine. You might be asking me, why, D-Man? Why is this game so bad? Oh yes, let me tell you. I am obsessed with this game. Not because of how much of a meme it is with my friends. Not because I played it. Actually, I haven't, but that is more of a good thing, trust me. It's because it is such a chaotic dumpster fire of a game. Every new detail I find about it is sacred. Even when the big old clown Nene baby over here probably hasn't even gotten over it. Let me list everything, and I mean everything, wrong with this game. One major criticism with this game is the extremely nonsensical narrative. The synopsis of the game goes like this. You're a kid who has an internal struggle. You stumble upon Balan Theater and are taken to Wonderworld by Balan. You find out that this guy named Lance is corrupting other inhabitants of Wonderworld by using their sorrow. They become monsters and you help resolve their conflicts by defeating the monsters and dancing. After that, they find a way to resolve their inner conflict. Do that 11 more times and you can face Lance. Once you beat him, it is revealed that he is corrupted, but gets corrupted once more. One more dance sequence later, and everyone leaves. Balan does a face reveal, and the kids leave to resolve their conflict. Doesn't sound so bad, but here are the problems. The characters speak the aforementioned Balinese, and half of the time it isn't even translated. Not even the song numbers are translated, so all you hear is a bunch of toddlers spitting bars. Coupled with the characters suddenly cutting a rug after a boss fight makes it even more confusing and hilarious. Trying to guess where all of the context is hidden. That's right, the novelization of the game. where everything you need to know is locked behind a book. It even rewrote some characters as well, completely fleshing them out, like how Cal Suresh went from being a sore loser to quitting chess because it took attention away from his slowly dying wife. Cas McGillen is the same person as the princess this clown named Attilio Caccini fell in love with. This implies that Wonderworld itself can time travel, and that's kinda weird. Whatever. Finally, Lance being the former maestro of Wonderworld and the creator of Balan due to his corruption. Although a more recent translation states that Wonderworld itself created Balan. So yes, people, the novel is the definitive version of the game. On top of that, the story also suffers from sudden tonal whiplash. It could go from, I can't build airplanes, to, my cat just got run over. Then the resolution's like, no, it's okay, the cat got out of the way in time. Don't even get me started on The Lady Who's Too Scared to Love, where the lady's parents die. Then, the game completely resolves it by having her dance and getting married. This is kind of a problem. Like, a major, serious problem. And what did they do? Nah, let's just have this lady boogie woogie and realize, oh, I remember. I'm gonna get married. Okay, what's sadder is that in the novel, instead of dancing, Balan and the kids actually talk to the inhabitants and tell them what they need to hear. That is so much better than 13 dance party sequences. I also have a problem with the ending. Why does everyone, including the kids, thank Balan? We are the ones who did everything throughout the entirety of this abomination, and he just gets all the credit for it? What? Aside from the story, the biggest killjoy of the game is the gameplay itself. Like I said earlier, the devs regulated costumes for one button. I also said this was a huge mistake because they used every button on the controller besides the D-pad and pause buttons. If you're not equipped with a costume, the only thing you could do is jump, which isn't so bad if it weren't for the fact that you can't jump when using a costume unless it can let you jump. You can't jump when you have a costume, because that meant basic game design needed to be used. The costumes also act as your health bar. If you get hit, you lose it. The problem is that some costumes are needed to solve puzzles. If you get hit using that costume, you'll have to backtrack and get it, which makes the game more annoying and tedious. The costumes themselves are pretty useless and very formulaic. There's jump, shoot, ground pound, and theatrical costumes. I think they were trying to go with what the capturable enemies from Mario Odyssey did. Tons of unique enemies to capture and control, also using the control scheme of a left stick and one button. If that is the case, then they tremendously missed the point of what made those work. Another aspect of the gameplay are the balance statues. By the end of the game, you'll need 110 of these. You'll also need to beat every chapter before fighting Lance. You can get these by exploring the level or getting excellence on Balan's Bout. Oh, don't even get me started on Balan's Bout. It's a QTE minigame where it's the closest thing to playable Balan. Oh wait, I forgot that exists. Although, it's fun when Lance is involved and they get to beat the crap out of each other, it is considered as a boring minigame and another pointless addition. We all have to admit though, the music for it is a banger. I even used it in the Knights video. The trophies are similar to the moons from Mario Odyssey, and they also entirely missed the point on that. The levels are a lot more linear than Mario Odyssey, so first-time players would suspect that the statues are more like optionable collectibles. When you beat the game, you get the third act of each level, where you can collect even more balance statues. Get them all, and what do you unlock? A new version of the final dance cutscene with... Oh, yeah. I forgot Hatless Balan exists. Yeah, this is something you see in the game's ending, the aforementioned face reveal. This design has gotten a lot of heat because it ruins the mystery of Balan wearing a hat. It's also extremely cursed. Okay, hot take here. I think it makes sense if we are considering the idea that Lance made Balan. They both look pretty similar, so it isn't completely out of left field. Also, there is concept art of him looking more Balan-like. There are also rumors of it being a forced change by the Square Enix higher-up. Oh wait, this is everything wrong with Balan Wonderworld, not everything right with Balan Wonderworld. Okay, where was I? Ah, yes. Another addition belongs to the hub, and they are the Tims. They are the A-life creatures akin to the Chow and Nighttopians. You can breed them, hatch eggs, and feed them drops. They follow you around the levels and their colors tied to abilities. The red ones attack enemies, the pink finds collectibles, the blue finds spiked spears, and the King Tims do all of the above. The King Tims are also useful to unlocking the secret Balan costume. Yellow and white Tims are the basic Tims, and you can change their colors by feeding them drops. You can lose them by leaving them behind as they're stunned or trapped. They can be added to the Tower of Tims, which progressively get more expansive as you add more Tims. So what is the problem when they're pretty complex? Well, it can be frustrating to backtrack just to retrieve a lost Tim, because you will need them to complete the level. Building up the Tower of Tims is also extremely tedious since you will need a lot of them to complete it. You don't really get much of anything besides new stuff from the tower. Sure, the King Tims can bring you the Balan costume, but that is the only true reward from getting these things. One of the bigger criticisms are the bosses themselves. The bosses go down in 3 hits, and they can range from incredibly easy to needlessly frustrating. These bosses test you on the mastery of the chapter's costumes. Some of them don't even work half the time. There are 3 methods to each boss, and countering them will earn you a Balan statue. Sometimes they can be incredibly difficult to do because you don't really know what to do. Lance is more praised for actually letting you choose your costumes, only to force you to use certain costumes by phase 2. That is pretty much it when it comes to everything wrong. The redeeming factors are more towards the art direction and music, even if it got them a lawsuit. Even the story, despite being somewhat broken and the novel picking up the pieces, has an excellent premise for one. So, how do we turn this now forgotten trash to a well-remembered treasure? It just needs to be fixed. At least, how I think it needs to be fixed. You can't agree with me, I'm not gospel. For starters, the story's premise is unique and needs to be properly communicated. So, the first thing is to remove the no dialogue rule entirely. Do what Klonoa does and completely expand on the fictional language. What if you got to talk with the NPCs, where they give hints towards the conflict of the inhabitants? Since you unlock 3 chapters throughout the game, what if every 3 chapters we get unique cutscenes that show Lance? We can see him getting progressively more frustrated as our main protagonist free more of the inhabitants. Then, when you finally fight him and get through the first phase, it makes the cutscene where he snaps and enters his shadow form a lot more sense. What if halfway through the game we also got to see some of his backstory as well, building up to the big reveal once he is defeated? On top of that, what if we got to learn more of the characters' conflicts and factors leading to them feeling the way they do? The novel already gave reasons for the characters, so this can fit like a glove. There is one thing I will keep, however. It's the musicals. With the addition of Balan and your player character speaking to them in a similar vein to the novel, then it cuts to the characters singing. Instead of the same 4 songs repeated 3 times, we get individual songs that tie to the character's conflict and the steps needed to take for the resolution. Then we get the cutscene of the character's resolution. Oh yeah, we can still have the songs in Balinese, but actually translated. It makes sense. This can still tie to the motif of it being a musical while still working. As for the gameplay, it is rather simple actually. Separate the attack and jump buttons, because that is basic game design knowledge. I'm no game designer, but even I think it makes sense this way. I feel like the costumes need to be reduced to at least 40 costumes, giving each world around 3 to 4 costumes. What if the costumes had their own unique move and not just copy-pasted abilities? Like Frost Fairy had a blizzard type attack, or Box Fox working like Stone Kirby and unleashing a shockwave. There is also giving Balan more stuff to do in the gameplay. What if there was a dualized type rule in the game's universe? You get to fuse with Balan because it's the only way to use the costumes. This takes inspiration from Nights into Dreams without completely ripping it off. This also makes Balan getting credited in the ending a lot more sense. This actually helps sell the game as a game where you play as Maestro Balan. Since one of the main methods of progression are the Balan statues, the game could be an actual collectathon instead. Make each level a whole expanded world, and you can still go on the path needed to fight a boss. They could still give you incentive to get trophies by making a certain amount of requirement to progress. It's in a similar approach to Mario Odyssey, like what they did with the moons. Speaking of bosses, I feel like that the hits should be doubled in order to give more opportunities to counter the boss strategies. There should also be a way to make some of the strategies less difficult and make a lot more sense. Probably have some hint as to what to do. Strategies that can be countered by actual working costumes. This does eliminate the fact that you need Tims to beat a level. Speaking of Tims, what if there was a way in the level to deliver Tims to the hub, and even go into the Tower of Tims? We can also limit the amount of points needed to complete the tower. This can make the process a lot less tedious to do. Okay, what else do I have on this list? Oh, that's it? Well, maybe it's because some of the improvements are kind of common sense, mainly the control scheme and costume mechanic. Whoop! Here we go again. If you know, you know. Although I tend to make fun of this game, it is also really heartbreaking to see it crash and burn like this. It had a good amount of potential to be a highly beloved game, or maybe even a cult classic. The premise for the story is very creative and touches on serious topics at times. The art direction is seriously beautiful and has some of the most creative character designs I have ever seen, ever. Like, ever. Balan Lance, mwah! I also unironically enjoy the soundtrack, specifically the boss themes. They go way harder than they should. It's just that the garbage execution of the story and gameplay made people realize the game was doomed from the start. It now has a stain on the reputations of very talented people. Like I said, this game feels like a worse version of Mario Odyssey. I know they very likely haven't taken inspiration from the game, but it's a game with similar mechanics and probably similar abilities that supremely missed the point of what made Mario Odyssey better. And Balan and Cappy are pretty identical when it comes to their designs. I feel like that's also a coincidence. However, there is a bright side to this outcome. There are people that really appreciate the game for the good aspects. People have comics of these characters, dubs of said comics, extremely creative animatics, and even very nice and not sus fan fiction. The worst thing I can say about the fandom is, well, people can like the game, but some like it a little too much. These people really respect the source material and do way better things with it than the devs themselves. So in the end, it may have been bad, but at least the fandom can help it heal. It's actually pretty bittersweet in a way. Well, I guess this is it. Good night, everyone. Merry Christmas, and have a Happy New Year. I'll see you guys then.